Thank you all for attending tonight. We've got some interesting things that'll happen. A quorum, please. Madam Clerk?
Yes, Alderman Ludwigson,
Here.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Here.
Alderman Dolek,
Here.
Alderman Williamson. Here. Alderman Messer.
Here.
All right, we have all 5 of our older people here, and it takes 3 as a quorum, so we have a quorum, we can proceed. Let's also introduce the rest of the dais here so that you have an idea, and our TV audience, which is thousands of people, have an idea of who's sitting up here. Can I start with you, Sherry?
Sherry Grafin, Assistant Finance Director.
Mark Roscoe, Superintendent of Public Works.
Peter Falcone, Assistant City Administrator.
Dan Peterson, Director of Building and Development.
Wendy Morgan Adams, City Clerk.
Joe Wade, City Administrator.
Kevin Carney, City Attorney.
Karen Schulteis, Deputy Clerk.
Rich Tibbetts, City Treasurer.
All right, behind the mirror. Thank you. He does all our work for TI and for our filming and everything else, so he's got a couple of jobs here. I've asked this evening for a Pledge of Allegiance led by, repeat your name for me. Come on up here.
All right, please stand.
Tell us who you are.
I am Robert Rezick. I'm the immediate past division commander from Division 39. It comprises of 5 flotillas, 1 in Des Plaines, 1 in Schaumburg, 1 in Skokie, 2 on the north side of Chicago. And 2 on the north side of Chicago.
All right.
And we meet in Skokie, and we are affiliated with the Wilmette Coast Guard Station that's on Gilson Park across from the Baja Temple, if you've ever been that way.
Yeah, I have been there. Thank
And
you.
that's where the boats are, and
Yes,
we have several boats there that we maintain out there.
yeah, you're up in Waukegan also.
Well, that's a different flotilla. That's Division 41.
All right, let's proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance,
Will
please.
do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Karen, is Pastor Carbone?
On Saturday, he expected to come. Something must have come up because he was expecting to come here.
All right, we're going to hold off on the invocation very simply because the person that was going to give it is not here yet. So we'll proceed, and we can always come back to it. It's always good to have prayers and good wishes from the Lord. So let's move on, Joe.
Brings us to item 5, approval of minutes. We have consideration of the April 9th regular workshop meeting minutes and the April 9th budget hearing minutes. Is there any additions, corrections? If not, entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Okay.
For the record, would you please note that I've abstained because I wasn't here for that meeting?
Thank you. We have no presentations tonight, but we have a few proclamations, beginning with item 7A, proclamation for the 30th Annual Senior Day Celebration. Would you like that read, Mr. Mayor?
Wendy, please.
Okay. I need a copy. Hold on, let's see if I can find it. Do you have a copy here?
This is about seniors, you know, this is about me. So I think I'd like to hear it, among other people.
I need to find the proclamation.
Karen?
Do you have it, Karen?
I don't have that proclamation. I have the proclamation for the Coast Guard.
Yeah, I have the Coast Guard, but I didn't get the other one. Let's see. Unless
All right, let's move on to the Coast Guard for the moment.
To the Coast Guard.
Okay.
It's right here if you want to read it. The 7A one.
The other one? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'll read the Coast Guard one first. That's okay.
All right, what do we have?
Okay, so recreational boating is fun and enjoyable, and we are fortunate that we have sufficient resources to accommodate the wide variety of pleasure boating demands. However, our waterways can become crowded at times and be a place of chaos and confusion. While being a marvelous source of recreation, boating to the unprepared can be a risky sport. Not knowing or obeying the navigation rules or the nautical rules of the road, drinking alcohol or taking drugs while operating a boat, or choosing not to wear your life jacket when doing so is clearly not the smart thing to do, are all examples of human error or lack of proper judgment. One particular behavior that can reduce the number of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year is by wearing the life jacket. It is a simple task that has the potential to reduce terrible loss in lives. Knowledge and skills are important in reducing human error and improving judgment. If people are aware of the risk, they are likely to take the precautionary measures to protect themselves and their friends and family. That is why we must continue to spread the message of boating safety, not only during National Safe Boating Week, but also throughout the entire year. Whereas an average 600 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the United States, approximately 84% of those are fatalities caused by drowning. And whereas the vast majority of these accidents are caused by human error or poor judgment and not by the boat, equipment, or environmental factors. And whereas a significant number of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year would be alive today had they worn their life jackets. And whereas today's life jackets are more comfortable, more attractive, and more wearable than stylers of years past and deserve a fresh look by today's boating public. Therefore, Nick Helmer does hereby support the goals of the North American Safe Boating Campaign and proclaim May 21st through 27th as National Safe Boating Week and the start of the year-round effort to promote safe boating. And we urge all those who boat to wear their life jacket and practice safe boating habits.
I'd like to add one comment. Nick Helmer is the mayor, and certainly the mayor supports this, but so does the entire council. So it's not just me, but our council supports it, our city supports it. You're doing a great job, and that's what it's all about. We thank you for that. You wanted to come up for a moment and give us a little background?
One of the things I wanted to say about the life jackets, if you're gonna buy one, have it the bright colors, so you orange, yellow, bright red. And the reason for that is if you're out in the water, especially at night, if there's a mishap, when we're out there with these dark colors, it's hard to see. And especially if there's any waves, it's difficult to really see because everything blends in black. So bright colors will stand out, and that's for your own safety. And as we say, life jackets float, you don't. So,
Well, thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much.
coming.
all
I'd like
right.
to present this to you if I could.
Well, we would appreciate that.
And what else do I have? That's it?
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
the other thing too, what I would mention is if you have, every village has got boaters in there. If you want to maybe put out a notice to them that if you want to have a free vessel safety check, we can come out and do this for the people, meet at a certain place and we'll come out and do a safety check. And if they pass, we will present them a decal that they can put on their boat. And it's one of those that if you're out on the water, it doesn't mean that you won't get stopped, but in most cases, if there are many boats out there, if they see that decal that you've gone through a safety check, they may just let you go and go to the one who has it. When we do the vessel safety check, if you're missing something, we tell you what you're missing, and if you get it, we'll come back and then approve it and give you that check, that decal. If you're out on the water and you're missing something, you could get a fine. So,
All right.
all right? Thank you very much.
so much.
Thank you for coming.
Kingsbury and Bridgeport.
Are you related?
We could be.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, back to the program. Oh, did you find the other one?
We did, yes.
All right, let's go with it then. And what are we talking
Okay,
about?
now we're talking about the 30th Annual Senior Celebration Day, which is today, April 23rd, 2018. Whereas education is a lifelong process, and whereas public education is a community enterprise and community education philosophy advocates full use of public facilities, programs, and services by every age group in the community. And whereas the skills, talents, and experiences of senior citizens are untapped resources in many communities, and intergenerational cooperation promotes efficient use of human resources. And whereas community education promotes the use of community resources, community volunteers in schools, senior citizen centers, and community agencies, and maximizes the use of human resources to provide educational opportunities for community residents of all ages. And whereas the goal of community education is to promote a sharing, caring, learning opportunity and community. Whereas senior citizens have earned our respect and recognition for their past accomplishments and their present and future contributions. And whereas Senior Celebration Day is a co-sponsored Township High School District 214 community education and City of Prospect Heights to encourage and develop programs and activities to meet the needs of all of the residents in High School District 214 and Prospect Heights. Now, therefore, Nicholas J. Helmer, Mayor of Prospect Heights, proclaims April 23, 2018 as a day in recognition of the 30th Annual Senior Celebration Day, and call upon the residents of High School District 214 and the City of Prospect Heights to recognize and celebrate the bonds they have discovered, the partnership they have formed, and the sense of community they have strengthened through community education programs.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to accept that? We'll make sure they get it tomorrow then. All right, we have one more, I believe.
Okay, we have one more, and that's to celebrate Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Therefore, Nicholas J. Helmer, Mayor of the City of Prospect Heights, hereby proclaims Arbor Day, April 27, 2018, in the City of Prospect Heights, and urges all to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands.
Thank you. And I gather we have no one from Arbor Day.
Mark Roscoe, Public Works.
Oh, yeah, Mark. Okay.
Mark forgot.
Okay.
And the next items, Mr. Mayor, are, we have several appointments, and we may wish to entertain a omnibus motion for this. It's a reappointment of Bob Corvus to the Water Committee, Louis Ennisser Jr. to the Water Committee, reappointment of Sean Dwyer to the Water Committee, reappointment of Catherine Michaely to the Water Committee, reappointment of John Styler to the North Shore Convention Visitors Bureau, and appointment of Seth Marcus to the Natural Resources Commission.
You know, I'm pleased because these are people that volunteer. They sometimes don't even get a thank you. Well, we thank all of them for serving and producing and bringing something good to our city. So thank you. Let's have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion?
Should we clarify that it's an omnibus motion to approve items 7D through I?
Yeah.
Yes.
Omnibus motion to approve the appointments listed in items 7D through 7I.
Oh, it should be D, too. D. I said D. Oh, I thought you said just D. No, sorry.
All right, we have the proper rules of order here. We can move on. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Joe?
Item 8, I don't believe
We
we
don't have any
have citizen
citizen
concerns.
concerns and comments.
Brings us to 9A, Chicago Executive Airport Report.
Mr. Jamie Abbott is here.
Sir, I'm not Director Kiefer. We gave him the night off tonight, kind of doing double duty with the budget, and
All right, but we do have uniforms here. You could have worn yours.
that's right. Yeah, I could have. I had to shave, though, which,
Are you required to shave?
yeah, went in
Really?
uniform, so,
Okay, you're in the Air Force, right?
yes, yeah, Air National Guard.
And your rank is
Major,
major.
yeah.
Great. It's great to have the military and the Coast Guard and everyone here represented. And we actually see people that belong there. So
All right.
go ahead with your report for the Chicago Executive Airport.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, just have a quick report for you tonight to update you on some projects and remind you of some stuff on the schedule that you may want to attend at the airport. I'll start off with, I'm going to go grab something real quick. Forgot my gift to Mr. Wade here. So finally, the airport hired a consultant, Mead and Hunt, to update our noise exposure maps. Just to give you a little history, the airport did a Part 150 study several years ago, which included, yes, sir, Mr. Rosenthal knows all this, which includes a noise exposure map contours to be drawn on properties surrounding the airport. So those expire every 5 years. So in order to keep our Part 150 update up to date, we did our 5-year update of that, those noise exposure maps. So here's a hard copy for you at the city. One will be delivered to the village, and one's at the airport. We put it on our website, but we only had 6 of these made. So this one is yours, and I'll leave it for you tonight. So if you're really bored and can't sleep, there's about 200 pages. But what's really cool at the end is, if you remember the open house we had at the Ramada, all of those questions and answers are in the back here. So if you asked a question, you should see it in here, in the actual final report. So I'll leave that for you. Coming up soon, in a couple months, you'll get a master plan update from the airport. If you remember, we completed phase 1. We're about to wrap up phase 2. It's at the FAA for review. Once that's completed, we'll move on to the final phase of the master plan. You'll get that presentation at the June joint meeting, which is June 27th at the Ramada and next to the airport here. So we'll get that agenda out to you and get that on your calendar as well. I'm sure you're aware we're building a new U.S. Customs facility. Customs and Border Patrol told not only Chicago Executive, but all the surrounding airports that our current facilities don't meet their standards. So instead of remodeling the facility that's currently there, which is at Atlantic's hangar, we're going to build a neutral site facility that's neutral to all 3 FBOs. It's going to meet their U.S. Customs standards. And we've hired an architect and a project manager to get started on that for us. And they'll be presenting some final floor plans and so forth in the next couple months. So that's, you'll see that coming down the road here soon. Couple announcements on events. There's a Young Eagles event at Signature this Saturday. For those of you who are not aware, Young Eagles is part of the Experimental Aircraft Association. They take children up to the age of 18 up for a free flight, introductory flight, just to get them oriented with aviation and maybe pursuing a career someday. And then lastly here, Al Palicki, the general manager of Signature Flight Support, is being inducted into the Illinois Aviation Hall of Fame this year. And his 30-plus year service at the airport, not only with Signature, but with Priester Aviation before that, is being honored in Springfield on Thursday, May 24th. I'll send out that reminder. So, Mr. Mayor or City Council, if you wanted to make the trip down, I'm sure he'll be honored to have your presence there. I'll be presenting his inductation. So. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Just a quick question for you,
Sure.
please. The Young Eagle Saturday, is that a flight day or just a orientation day?
No, it'll be a flight day. They'll be taking kids up for flights, assuming the weather cooperates on Saturday.
All right, and then you also said the customs agency will service other airports too?
Oh, no,
Not
I'm
just
sorry.
Chicago Executive?
So all of the satellite airports are having to update their facilities. So not only Chicago Executive, but Waukegan, DuPage. We're kind of all getting hit at the same time with updating our facilities. So this facility will only service aircraft that come to Chicago Executive.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, please? There being none, thank you for your presentation.
Yes, sir.
I really appreciate you coming out, Jamie. And tell Mr. Kiefer to get well. We're looking for him.
Item 9B is March Treasurer's Report by Assistant Finance Director Sherry Grafin.
The March report for May 1st, 17 through March 31st of 18, which represents 92% of our fiscal year, was distributed in the packet. At this point, for all funds combined, the city's total revenues represent about 108% of the budgeted revenue, and the expenses have been held to 76% of the budget. So we're looking for a strong finish for the end of the year. If anybody has any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Well, Sherry, I think it's relevant to ask, there was a report in the Journal that we weren't doing so well. How
I
did
was
that
gonna,
come
I was
about?
gonna address that when we talked about the budget, or we can talk about it now. The Journal misunderstood or didn't realize that there are sufficient reserves carrying forward from year to year to cover the budget that we're currently passing. So while one of the funds, specifically the Capital Improvement Fund, is showing just expenses, there's over $7.5 million in that fund ready to be spent on the improvements in the city. So very strong position.
We have the money, and we know that it'll cover at least what we're working on now.
Yes, year one of capital improvement expenses is coming in at around 2.2, but we have nearly, I think it's 7.6 million have been set aside in that fund to cover that.
Excellent, thank you. Joe?
Which brings us to the consent agenda. We have second reading. Oh, I'm sorry, staff reports. 20 minutes.
All right, where are we? Right on the left end here. Chief, a lot of things going on in what you're in charge of. Tell us about it.
Clearing up the weather. Why is everything
All right, thank you, Alderman Dolick.
I have no report, thank you.
Back to Alderman Ludwigson.
few things. I'd asked them that I'd receive a copy of roster. So I'd go through and see. I'd ask them to go through. Everybody's expired and we don't need that anymore. I think, sorry about that, Rich. I think we need to clean that up and come up with a way to, some of the committees we recognize by date of appointment, and some of them are by expiration, just to get that to be consistent so that when we see it, we know what committees are still active and are no longer there. I don't know if we need any action to remove committees. There was the Economic Development Committee, we had an Appearance Committee, maybe we still do, but everybody's expired on it. So I'd ask Kevin what we would need to do to make sure that that's updated.
There are committees that were created by action of the council. If you wanted to dissolve them, it would require an action by the council to dissolve them. I mean, if they have no active members, they're essentially defunct as it is, but they would still be in the code and available. So if you wish to phase them out, we just would require action by council to do that.
Yeah, none of them are committees that meet or have met, some of them in years. So I think just to keep it clean and know what we have out there, that would be a good idea.
Right, we could do that via housekeeping ordinance or resolution, depending on the form of the committee.
Okay. The other thing is, I'd like to ask the city attorney if he could draft an amendment to our city code with regards to attendance of the meetings by the city attorney. There seems to be confusion about that. I thought we've been through this and it was clear. I think maybe it's unclear in the city code. So I'd like to ask that he draft something to make it clear that the attorney is to be at both city meetings, the regular meeting and the workshop meeting. And maybe even put something in there and any other meetings as deemed necessary by the council. Because sometimes we'll have a special meeting where you should be there. I think it might have been useful to have you there Tuesday night, I think, maybe, but we need to clarify that so that we know when you're going to be there or not. Would that be something you could do and bring to a workshop?
Yeah, my suggestion would be to make this a workshop item, so it can be discussed, and I can have a draft ordinance for discussion at the workshop, and then the council can discuss it, and if they want to make any changes or do whatever they feel is necessary after that discussion, we can move forward from there, but I can certainly prepare something for the next workshop. If that's what you'd like.
Okay. And my last one is a question about the budget, and I'm going to ask it only because it's fresh in my mind, so I could ask you about it. There were some recent items that we had to clear up. That we're making an amendment to our previous year's budget, but since that has happened, there's been other things that have come up that have changed. Are those in this amendment? One of them was like the purchase of a piece of equipment that, because of invoicing, crossed over budget years. Is that something we have to make a change?
The carryover of that cost of that equipment, about $100,000, you're referring to the backhoe,
Right.
that is included in the current budget that we're set to have for second reading today.
Okay.
I'll go over the changes from first to second reading. That was one of them. There's a couple other ones as well.
But as far as you were saying what we are year-to-date in our budget, how we're 100+% in revenue and 70-some% in expenses, some of that is due to not purchasing items, capital improvement.
Correct, that were accrued for last
They're
year.
not just operational items.
Correct.
Okay. So that has been cleared up in the budget amendment then? Will it be? Or is it part of this amendment?
The budget amendment, when we went through that and did that increases and decreases,
Right.
some of those capital outlay budgets were reduced.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
One point I'd like to make, Alderman, are you suggesting that the PZBA should return to having an attorney, which they eliminated years ago at their meetings?
Kevin, is that, I only ask that we do what's in the code now, and that's that we have the attorney present at both meetings. Our workshops used to be, we have workshops, now that you asked, the workshop used to be a true workshop, committee of the whole, where there was really no business. Now you really can't tell the difference between our workshop meetings and regular meetings, and I just want to make sure that it's clear that the city attorney is present at those. If something comes up that's important, that we need the city attorney there for a PZBA meeting, by all means, if the PZBA feels they need him there, he should be. I don't think that the ordinance should read that it is only those two meetings that the city attorney should be present at. It should be, at a minimum, those two and any others that are deemed necessary.
And how does that relate to the budget, which you worked on yourself? I mean, is there going to be a budget increase in cost for attorneys?
No, we've always budgeted having them at two meetings.
Well, money-wise, though, you budgeted how much?
I think that city attorney's a little over $100,000 in the budget.
Well, we should check that.
Sure.
It should be a consideration, anyway.
No, I agree it should be a consideration, but I don't think not having legal advice on, big decisions is something that we should.
PZBA makes big decisions.
Say again?
PZBA makes big,
If you're suggesting that they should be there, I don't have a problem with that.
well, again, I'd have to relate it to the budget. What is it going to cost us?
Okay.
As I would want to know if attorneys have to be here in a workshop situation. Who's next? Alderman Rosenthal.
The Strategic Directions Committee had a meeting last Thursday,
we'll be discussing some of the activities in executive session.
Any more clarification we need from him?
No, just to clarify, the ordinance I'll draft will just relate to city attorney's attendance at regular and workshop meetings, and then as directed by mayor or council.
All right, but regarding executive session that Alderman Rosenthal just brought up.
No, that will be addressed when we adjourn the
When we
executive
go.
session. Correct.
Okay. Karen, Deputy Clerk.
Nothing, just thank you, everybody, for coming to the mayor's breakfast. We had a good time, and we had a lot of help, a lot of support, and a big crowd. Thank you.
All
And
right.
also, if you haven't given in your statement of economic interest, then you may want to get in before May 1st, or if you haven't received it, call me.
Pretty important. Mr. Administrator?
No report, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
All right. Madam Clerk?
I just want to clarify, there's nothing in the city code that requires attorneys to be present at any of the council meetings. So are we talking about making a requirement that's not in the city code? I mean, we'll deal with this, I suppose, at the workshop meeting, but I've checked the code. There is nothing that requires it. So, I mean, I think Mr. Ludwigson is asking us to do something that's not required. We do need to discuss the need for that.
All right, we're going to do that. We're going to have a workshop discussion, as our attorney just pointed out, and we'll see what comes out of there.
Okay.
Okay?
And just again, as our deputy clerk said, I want to thank everybody who attended the mayor's breakfast. I want to just talk about the fact that the chamber is now working on their annual golf outing and a lot of other activities, and we look forward to having a good year at the chamber as well.
It quickly qualified again, Mayor's Community Breakfast is what we had. It wasn't my party, it was for the entire community.
It's community breakfast, yes, thank you for the
My
clarification.
my birthday is no longer celebrated, so that's not an issue. Let's move on. What do we have next? Are you done? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, pass the gavel now to Alderman Messer.
I just want to remind everyone that next week on Saturday, May 5th, from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. is the American Cancer Society's North Central Cook County Relay for Life event. That includes Prospect Heights, Wheeling, Mount Prospect, Arlington Heights, Des Plaines, and Park Ridge. Our very own Mayor Helmer will be speaking during the opening ceremonies, and our esteemed K-9 unit of Officer Tebow and Officer Bain will be presenting a K-9 demonstration at 3 p.m. There's also a three-legged race, a couple of live bands scheduled. If you want a complete schedule of the events, there was a link included in the e-news that was sent out to everyone, and there's also a link to the American Cancer Society's page on the city's Facebook page. All are welcome to join in the festivities in the fight against cancer. It'll take place at Prospect High School at 801 West Kensington Road in Mount Prospect. And again, it's next week, so not this coming Saturday, but next week, Saturday, May 5th, from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and we hope to see you there.
Let's clarify that Officer Bain is a four-legged officer.
That's right.
Yes, he's the K-9 of the
Three-legged
K-9
race. And Officer Thibault is his trainer, handler, and godfather, really. They are a team.
Yes.
All right. What do we have next?
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder that on Wednesday night, April 25th, the PZBA will be having their public hearing. It's a special meeting date due to scheduling, so it's not the Thursday, it's Wednesday, the 25th, 7 p.m. here. And one of the agenda items is the public hearing for the commercial truck additional parking ordinance. So one last time, this is your notice. If you want to come to the public hearing, it will be Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Thank you.
All right, and then we have,
No report, Mr. Mayor.
and Mr. Rasko?
A little report, Mr. Mayor. It's a great time of year. We're finally getting to put away our snow plows and our salt spreaders and gear up for the summer. We're all excited about that. The NRC is already in tune to the spring weather. The garden club is starting to gear up. The Public Works, we're taking down some trees that were hazardous over the winter. We're clearing up the area, what we're calling our public service park area between the fire department and police department. So look for some positive changes in that little parcel of land. And we just, we're excited that spring is finally here, so that's it, sir.
I don't, yeah, we had a great time yesterday. I'm sorry, Saturday. That was a real neat event. I do have a question regarding legal costs for the contract we're working on. I guess we'll save that to executive session. Is that right? Alderman Ludwigson emailed in and said he'd like to know what the legal costs are to date for one of the areas that we're looking to sell. We save that for,
Yeah, we can talk, we'll discuss that in executive
Okay.
session.
thank you. All right, Joe.
Any
Oh,
further
Alderman Williamson.
Sorry, I'm in the penalty box. I have no official report. I would like to request that executive session be moved up in the rotation to before new business to discuss the potential, to discuss real estate.
Mayor, if I may.
Please.
This, there was no final action can be taken on this item. It was gonna be discussed in executive session regardless, and I don't think it's necessary. I've discussed it with Alderman Messer to move it up unless you want to talk about it before everything else, because there will be no final action taken. There's no contract or anything to approve.
I think that we're going to discuss it anyway, and I wasn't here for that last meeting, and I'd like to be brought up to speed before we do discuss it.
There wasn't going to be, we were going to remove that item from the agenda and discuss it in executive session. So that last item was going to be discussed in executive session and not discussed in.
We'll just pretend I stopped at Happy Spring and I have no report.
All right, Joe.
Consent agenda.
Oh, there he is again. Oh, my gosh. I've seen you twice tonight. You've got a knock on the mirror, so
Yeah, I
you
know.
know.
I just have an announcement to make, and that has to do with the Arbor Day on Friday. Even though we had a proclamation, the Garden Club is going to be planting a tree on Arbor Day at Eisenhower School at 10 o'clock in the morning. Patrick and I will be there to video it, and the children will come out and sing, and we invite everybody to attend. 10 o'clock on Friday, Eisenhower School. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Item 10, consent agenda. 10A is ordinance approving the official zoning map for the city of Prospect Heights, second reading, and correction that was brought to the attention at the last meeting has been made.
All right, I'd like to interrupt. Gentlemen, you're welcome to go. I know you're waiting, you're waiting for dinner, and but we usually stay here till midnight, so. I'm giving you the opportunity to leave. But thank you for coming. That was real neat. All right. Thank you. When are we having lollipop chicken? Is that on the agenda?
Yes, if we could finish
Yeah.
10A.
All right, go ahead.
10A, is there a motion or discussion or
Motion to approve
second?
What are we approving of?
10A.
10A.
Zoning map.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion. We have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Let's have a roll call, please.
Alderman Messer?
Aye.
Alderman Williamson?
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson? Alderman Rosenthal?
Aye.
Alderman Dolick?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
And Mr. Mayor, your question about the possibility of moving item 12A up, this is Lollipop Chicken. It received a unanimous vote recommendation from the Plan Commission Zoning Board. It's an ordinance approving a special use permit for a sit-down restaurant at 658 North Milwaukee Avenue, Milwaukee Plaza. They are anxious to start their business, and request on waiver of first reading is made for tonight.
Let's have a motion to waive first reading, please.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Alderman Williamson?
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Messer.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0, so now we go ahead and approve as a second reading. Same issue.
Correct.
All right, you want to restate it then?
Item
B.
B is ordinance approving a special use permit for a sit-down restaurant, Lollipop Chicken, 658 North Milwaukee, and this would be second reading.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Messer.
Aye.
Alderman Williamson.
Motion passes 5-0. I told you a bit earlier, I'm coming because I have no idea what a lollipop chicken is. I don't know if that's half ice cream and half chicken or whatever it is. But thank you for coming. It's been approved, and you're working with Karen, I believe, to get your documents. Business,
Dan, but I will make sure you get all of your business.
Mayor, would you like to adjust the agenda for our other people? to
Yes,
review
let's
tonight?
do that.
Okay. Well, we also have C under new business, and this is a resolution approving the fiscal year budget for Chicago Executive Airport. Jamie Abbott here, Airport Director Jamie Abbott is here, as well as Finance Director Jason Griffith.
Good evening again, sir, City Council. I'm not sure everybody knows Jason. Jason is our new meaning 8 months?
Since July.
Since July.
so he's still a newbie till the
Yeah,
year is
he's
up,
still pretty new.
right?
New finance director, he's doing a great job. First time doing the budget this year, but it went very well, so I'm proud of Jason. We're here to just answer any questions. Jason's gonna hit some highlights, some kind of high-level stuff, and then if you want to go line by line, we can, or we could just answer any
Well, let's
questions.
do the highlights, and then we can decide if there
Yes,
should be
sir.
more.
We could do that.
Wheeling has already approved this budget.
Yes, so the first was the board of directors of the airport, and then it went to
Yeah.
Village of Wheeling a couple weeks ago, and then tonight is the final passage.
Okay, thank you.
Jason?
Thank you, Jamie. Thank
Sure.
you, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. For the FY19 budget, budgeted revenues are expected to increase to $4,342,343. This is a $124,970 increase from FY18. Operating expenses are budgeted to be $3,383,694. That is 77.92% of our budgeted revenues. As part of the airport business plan, we have to stay under that 90% of our budgeted revenues. We plan on continuing our reserve fund transfers for this year, so sewer fund, capital equipment fund are scheduled to be $200,000 each, and then any, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Sewer fund, anything charged to the sewer goes into the sewer reserve fund. The capital equipment fund and the building improvement fund are scheduled to be $200,000 transfers this year. As Jamie mentioned earlier today, the main capital project that we have is for the U.S. Customs facility and design. This is an ongoing project from last fiscal year. Unrestricted net assets, again, as part of our airport business plan, we have to keep 25% of our current year's budgeted operating expenses on hand. That's $845,924 this year. At the end of April 30th, we expect a estimated running balance of just over $2.4 million.
Questions, Alderman Ludwigson?
No questions.
And coming down the line,
No questions, thank you.
Alderman Dolick, no
Just
questions.
when is your expectation for the new customs house to be built?
Well, by the,
Completed, I guess, started and completed.
yeah, yes, sir. I think by the time we get it designed and the engineers are done with it, we're hoping late fall, early winter, hopefully. So hopefully this calendar year.
Be
but,
completed or?
At least started. So we included money in this fiscal year to get
And
this.
your estimated time to completion?
Not sure yet. Not sure. It's a small building, so it shouldn't take you.
Alderman Messer?
I have no questions.
Anyone left on it that would like to ask questions? Yes, sir, Alderman Williamson. Good. The question I have is there any news on the $150,000 approximate that we stand to lose or may have already lost as far as revenue flowing to the city.
Sure, yep. And you have a memo in your inbox as we speak. I wanted to make sure I did that before we came to the meeting. So an update on you're speaking of the Illinois fuel
Yes.
sales tax.
Yes.
So the FAA has agreed to let the state work on that until June. So we have until this summer. There's some legislators currently working on how they're going to distribute those funds. So as you know, any local sales tax on fuel will be somehow given back to airports. We're not sure how just yet, how that mechanism is going to work, whether it's going to be directly proportional to the fuel we sell, just coming back to the airport. Does it go directly to the airport? We don't know yet. Does it go to the state and the state distributes that? We're not sure. We're also not sure on what the restriction on how we can spend these funds. I mean, do we have to spend it on local share for grants? There's just so many questions we don't know yet, but I will keep you updated as we get the updates, and it's really, I wish I had better answers for you. But,
All right, but the direction is that the airport spends that money and the city gets nothing,
essentially.
essentially.
Yeah.
Really.
And we're,
Well, you know, we have a budget and we need to work with numbers
Yeah.
we know about. So the sooner you know, I'd appreciate
Yes,
getting
sir.
it to our CFO here. That would be great.
Will do.
Also, I've asked on numerous occasions, and other aldermen have also, to get a copy of the letter from your attorney that initially told us we were grandfathered in and we wouldn't have problems like this. I've asked Betty Cloud, I've asked my one or two other directors, I'm asking you. I hope, you know, maybe it was after the fire, by the way, so we can't say that we lost our copy in the fire.
Yeah.
But if you could try to expedite that, I'd like to
Sure
know
will.
how this came about.
Yeah, and the memo that you have now was concurrently drafted by me and the attorney, so hopefully that helps answer some. But that specific issue, I will look into.
Yeah, because either we were misled or at the time it was the right answer. I don't know.
Okay, I'll
All
get
right,
you that answer.
thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming out this evening.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
And we have another,
We have another item is D, discussion of Hillcrest Lake and the slough and possible. Oh, I'm sorry.
motion to approve the budget for the Chicago Executive Airport as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Williamson. Alderman Messer.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Motion passes 5-0. All right, now,
Sorry, I missed my cue. Discussion of Hillcrest Lake and slough and possible ways to enhance public awareness, interest, and consideration of assignment of this task to the Natural Resources Commission. And this is an item that Alderman Rosenthal asked be added to the agenda.
okay. And were we going to move that into,
No, sir, this is for discussion.
all right. Do we need any presentation? We have members here from that group. Do you want?
Maybe perhaps Alderman Rosenthal, his request to add this to the agenda, so.
All right, let's go with Alderman Rosenthal.
Okay, my purpose in initially bringing this to the attention of the council is that, in my opinion, we have a very valuable resource that the community knows something about, but not enough. And it is a resource, I believe, that the community should be involved with and know about and take advantage of its beauty and its natural scenery and everything that involved with it. So my recommendation was that we charge the commission to come up with a plan to present to the council in the next couple of months as to what could be done to make the slough and the lake area more open and conducive to greater community participation. The scope of my request is to charge the commission with presenting a plan of action to the council, not for them to do anything at this point, but merely to present the plan. rather than having we as a committee, the council, work as a committee on this. This is something that they are qualified for. I would see them involving not only the commission, but the community around the lake, the community as a whole, and getting broad-based input for a recommendation to the council. I don't see any expense at this point that we're going to be incurring. I discussed this with the leaders of the commission, and they are excited and motivated to take on this activity.
All right, so what do we need to assign it to the commission?
Do you need a motion? If so, I will make the motion.
We would need a motion to refer the matter of Hillcrest Lake and the slough and the enhancement of public awareness and interest to the Natural Resources Commission for the preparation of a report.
That will be my motion. I would like to add to it that if they feel comfortable with it, and they did when I talked to them at last, to have a report to us by our second meeting in June. Is that still feasible? Okay.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
All right.
It looks like you have a comment.
We have a comment. There you are again. Okay.
I wanted to ask that Public Works be involved in this as well, because ultimately, the execution of the plan will be devised by a collaboration between the Natural Resources Commission and Public Works. And obviously, the funding from that is going to come out of a budget that involves manpower for Public Works.
I fully agree with that, and it was my omission leaving them out in my written recommendations to the, when I presented this to leadership, I had the Public Works Department involved in there.
So-
It was my omission, not intentional.
No, that's fine. I was just pointing it out. And can we appoint Mark Roscoe as the point man as a Public Works liaison to work alongside of the Natural Resources Commission then?
That's fine.
Are you, yes, you're adding to your motion, accepting what was noted by
Yes,
Alderman Williams.
yes.
Thank
All
you.
right, so that's been added. We can still go with what we've got,
Yeah, as amended.
as amended. Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Alderman Rosenthal,
Aye.
Alderman Dolek,
Aye.
Alderman Williamson,
Aye.
Alderman Messer. Aye. What did I forget? Alderman Ludwigson.
Motion passes 5-0. The next item on the agenda is the EO 1819, item E, in other words, a staff memo and ordinance amending the administrative adjudication process. Chief, you probably have the best knowledge of this. Could you enlighten us, please?
There's simply a process to move cases from the County Municipal Court at Rolling Meadows to a local adjudication court that could hear items that would normally get dismissed at the court level because they're overwhelmed.
If, for further context, Mayor, the Cook County State's Attorney, not just in Rolling Meadows, but in all the branch courts, has basically put municipalities on notice that they won't be prosecuting anything short of a moving violation or a DUI. So what this ordinance does is bring matters that would normally have been adjudicated at the branch court in-house into the local adjudication process, accepting moving violations and some other offenses that are statutorily exempted from administrative adjudication.
And Chief, I need to ask, are we talking only about criminal trespass, theft, and retail theft? Or are there more items that would be brought into City Hall for adjudication?
There are other items that are already listed under the city code, as well as a few items under the city zoning code as well.
Correct, and the second ordinance, Mayor, that you're referencing, these are items that we actually don't have ordinances addressing, so we're adding those to the city code, but it includes offenses that are already listed in the city code, as well as what the chief noted, some building code violations and other violations.
Will they be restated as not only criminal theft, et cetera, but also items from the city code? And do you name those items then, or do you just refer to the city code?
So the ordinance E 1819, which is the administrative adjudication process ordinance, that permits the adjudication internally of all violations of the city code outside of certain statutorily exempted violations that I mentioned earlier. The second ordinance is creating or is adding to the city code these 3 specific violations that were not in the city code that would have been prosecuted by the state's attorney, but now would be handled internally.
All right, then this is, Joe, going to be set up how? How do you determine, is it every Tuesday of the 3rd month, or?
It will follow a regular schedule similar to, we have an adjudication process for red light cameras as well. So there'd be there would be a regularly scheduled time
All right,
procedure.
Attorney-wise, we're thinking about Guy Carms, who's has been doing most of the work at Rolling Meadows. And then if you need some help, we've got, let's say Joe Vito would be a backup.
Right, and the intention would be the hearing officer would remain the same, and the city prosecutors would remain the same.
Okay.
It would just be performing their duty here rather than the circuit court.
All right, both of these are first readings as I read them here?
That's correct, sir, yes.
Okay, no need for votes or agreements or anything else. Okay, what's next, Joe?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
A lot of the, I think with our liquor code, don't we kind of say if the state says you can do it, you can do it. If the state says you can't, you can't. So we really don't get into a lot of detail into ours as far as, things like happy hour we've talked about before with the liquor code and that. Why are we doing it where we're kind of naming everything in our code versus just saying, if the state says that you can adjudicate this locally, you can do it?
That's actually how the ordinance is written. It basically grants the prosecutor, grants the city the authority to hear offenses of the city code via administrative adjudication, and it exempts the certain statutorily required exemptions that.
But these criminal trespass, are we changing that from a criminal offense to a ordinance offense?
Well, we are, it's currently no offense under the city code. We're making an ordinance violation. So it would have been prosecuted as a misdemeanor in circuit court without any sort of local ordinance violation written on it. What we're doing is, because those are no longer being prosecuted by the state's attorney, we are making that an ordinance violation so that if there is criminal trespass or retail theft, there's some adjudication of that offense rather than it not being addressed at all.
So I guess a better way to ask it is, are we incorporating everything that the state's attorney is saying they no longer will do, that we're allowed to do?
I believe when I was working with Chief Steffen, we identified a list of offenses that were not in the city code, or were in the city code but were being enforced as misdemeanors by the state's attorney, and we are bringing those in-house.
Okay.
So that the intent is that there is nothing that would be a violation that is not being prosecuted. The state's attorney will still prosecute the cases that they're willing to prosecute, and those cases that they're not willing to prosecute in the circuit court, we will adjudicate here administratively.
It's just a different way of, I understand that the county, whatever their problems are, they say they won't prosecute retail theft unless it's a 10th offense or something like that, which how do you get to 10 offenses if they won't prosecute the first, second, or third one? But when we deal with those things now, are they dealt with the same way? If it's just, I always picture city code issues as not being like necessarily police matters. Like if someone steals something, they're running out of a store, usually you would chase after them because they're committing a crime versus a city ordinance. Does that change what you have to do or how you do things?
It doesn't really change how we have to do things, but it gives us a wider latitude in how we address this. And it gives us a tool that we didn't have before. And, you know, I'll give you a perfect example. You take a 17-year-old that you pick up for retail theft that necessarily ran away, but it's not something that necessarily qualifies for misdemeanor court. And why should I take and fingerprint or have our officers fingerprint this young person and have that be on their record and then have to go through the whole process? What it does is it diverts it into the, basically, the adjudication process. And this is something that we're not the first, actually, we're like the Johnny come lately with this. We're one of the last towns that are actually incorporating these ordinances to be able to be taken care of at the local level.
But if you catch somebody, I could probably talk to you offline about this, but if you catch somebody in the act of stealing something, and you guys show up there, oh, there he is, that doesn't stop you. People shouldn't be lulled into a sense of security where, oh, I could take something, they're just gonna, if they find me, write me a ticket. But you can still detain a person because they've taken something. That doesn't eliminate that because it's a city code issue now versus a.
No, we call that a municipal arrest in law enforcement, and it's something that we've utilized, you know, since I started here. It's just that we just never had no process to deal with it. Most of these don't even require like taking anybody into cuffs. I mean, if you had to, but if you did, usually then at that point, if there's a level where it crosses a certain threshold, we would refer to.
But a lot of times, I watch way too much TV late at night, and a lot of times you catch people because they're doing something so low level that when they do that, you check them to see if they've got anything outstanding. That wouldn't change this. If somebody is caught red-handed stealing, you're still gonna check to see if they have a warrant and do all that kind of stuff.
I would imagine that before we even write a ticket, that you would verify that they have an actual good driver's license. You'd identify, and you'd already know their background already.
So it doesn't change anything?
No, it does not, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Joe, what do we have?
Well, we could go back, I think we've addressed some of the issues from the audience. We could go back to old business. Item 11A is second reading of the ordinance increasing the number of Class A2 liquor license with the hours of Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 4 a.m., and Sunday, 12 noon to 3 a.m., and from 1 to 3 by request from Ramada's Tap House Grill, 1090 South Milwaukee, and Players Pub and Grill, 1250 River Road, reducing the number of Class A liquor licenses from 7 to 5.
I would like to entertain a motion to table this particular issue, but we're still not done looking through it and at it and seeing what else can be done. So if someone would make that motion, I'd appreciate it.
So move.
We have a motion to table. We have a second. We have a second. We're not going to have anything to present to you, so I'm not sure what the hangup is here. Nothing's been decided, nothing's been done, and nothing's been changed. We need to work on this probably another go-around, or maybe eliminate it altogether. So I have a motion. What do I need?
We need a second. If not a second, then we just, I guess, vote on our motion to approve 11A.
Second.
Thank you.
So moved.
Can we have discussion?
Well, again, there's nothing to discuss because we have nothing, no answers.
Was that a second, wait, just for point
That
of
was,
order?
that was just the second for the motion, so we still need to approve that
He
motion.
didn't make the motion, it was the attorney that read it, so you meant to say.
No, I
so
made the
moved.
motion.
No,
You
Larry
made the
made-
motion to table it.
Right.
Right.
Are you making the second to table it, or are you making the second to
To
approve it?
the second to table, but then we have to discuss it, and then we have to approve whether or not we're going to remove it, correct?
Correct.
Correct, okay.
So it's not being removed yet, it's a second, so we can discuss.
What's the next?
why we're
So,
doing
so we have a motion, we have a second on the motion to table item 11A. Is there discussion?
I'm wondering why we're tabling this again.
Because there has been no action taken. We have not investigated anything. And I am not in favor of the whole way, the whole ordinance as would result or not result from a vote.
Because I thought we had discussed it when we had the first reading a month ago, and Players was here, and they made their presentation, and we asked questions, and we had discussion, so I thought most of us, and the other alderman can correct me if I'm wrong, were kind of ready to vote on it, so I mean, I might be missing something, but I just don't know why we're delaying it even.
It's my understanding that the ordinance is going to change, that the ordinance as it's currently constituted is not ready to be brought forward, and that it's going to be modified before it's brought forward to vote. Is that correct, Mayor?
That's exactly right.
So this would give us time to make the modifications that the mayor's been discussing before it's brought for final vote to the council.
Is it a possibility to just vote on this the way it is, and then when you have a new one, since we don't know how long it'll be going on for, instead of continuing it each meeting, just vote now, and if they want to request something different, just have a revised ordinance presented at that time?
So the council has two options. They can vote to table. You can table an item indefinitely. So we can table this item until it's felt that it's ready to be brought back forward for consideration, if that time comes. If it's determined that, and it's not ready to be voted on, or it will not move forward, we would just bring it back and then it would be voted on and voted down. Or the council can just simply vote on the item as presented, and if it's denied, they can always come back and ask for a new ordinance. It's not like the ZBA where there's a cooling off period between bringing an item for consideration if there's a denial.
I mean, I guess if I'm understanding it correctly, that they're going to make changes anyway, so it's almost like just vote on this, and then if they want to come back and request something besides what they're asking, that it would just come back as a new ordinance would be a cleaner way to do it.
So it would be, the more expedient way to do it would be table, because we'd already be in second reading. So if we tabled it, now if there were substantive changes that needed to be made, we would have to probably bring it back for first reading, just if the substantive changes were made. But from a convenience point of view, tabling is more convenient at this point.
Couldn't we always do a waiver of first reading and a second reading like we do on several other matters, so the expedience thing really wouldn't be any different?
You could always waive first reading.
Do any of the other aldermen have any?
Sir, if I could make a comment? You good?
Me? I'm not, no.
I'm asking for permission to speak.
Go ahead. I have
Based
more
on-
explanation.
Based on the last discussion we had about this, really the sticking point was, on our end, we needed more police protection in order to enforce a later liquor license for for one, much less two. And the changes that we're talking about are really on the part of the applicant, not on the part of the city. We've had no discussion about hiring additional police. So I, at this point, am not in favor of any further 4 AM licenses, and I would rather just vote on this as it sits. And, if we want to have discussions about increasing the police force to accommodate it, we can weigh the good versus the bad. We could weigh the cost versus the benefit and discuss it at that time, but I don't see that happening anytime in the near future, so I would like to go ahead with the vote.
Well, lastly, said then, I'm sorry, Alderman Rosenthal, go ahead.
I think my comment is a point of order, and I'll defer to the attorney on this thing. The motion on the floor is the table, and that's what we should be talking about, whether or not, and that we should take a vote on it. You have the motion, you have a second.
Correct.
You should vote on the table, on whether or not to table.
You can vote to table, or you can withdraw the motion. But yeah, we have a vote, we have a motion, and we have a second. So.
All right, if I could finish, and then we can do whatever is the right thing to do. One of our aldermen here quoted me as saying, I am in favor of 4 o'clock licenses. That is not true. As a matter of fact, in print, it was said, I have problems with a 4 o'clock license. And
You're going to be
what,
consistent about.
is it your turn, I'm sorry.
You're going to be consistent.
That's right.
So go ahead.
Can we have private discussions later in privacy?
Well, I was just
Don't-
going
You
to,
don't have the floor at the moment, okay?
well,
But I'll get back to you.
Alderman Rosenthal questioned why we were discussing a motion to table. I think the attorney answered that, and we need to move on with the closing the discussion, the vote. So, I mean, are you not recognizing Alderman Rosenthal's request that we do this, or?
I think that we're in the middle of discussion. I think the mayor has a right to make a statement.
You're running over my intent here by saying things that you may have erroneously stated in the past. So, the issue here was that the way our liquor codes are written and the designations we have A, which is a 3 o'clock license. This is an A2, I believe, to move it up to 4. I don't like any of that. I'd like to rewrite the whole thing as to whether or not in the future people can even apply for a 4 o'clock license. And in order to do that, I think there's like a domino effect. Something has to be done first before I can get to the end of my intent as to what I want to do. You're all voting, so if you want to go ahead and talk about something that I'm going to change anyway, it doesn't matter. I do have powers as a liquor commissioner, and I will use those powers. So if you want to do whatever you want to do, you're chasing away business, and I want to make this a little bit slower and a little reasonable, and I'm all on your side, believe it or not. So don't try to circumvent me because you don't you think I'm going to do something different. Alderman Rosenthal.
Mr. Mayor, I call for the question on whether or not to table. That's what's on the floor now.
All right, anyone else before we take that? Let's have, pardon?
Since I'm only going to do it because Larry let you go all that time and grandstand, now I'm going to hop up on that box. I'm trying to figure out, honest to God.
I'm sorry, someone get on the box, I can't hear you.
I'm trying to figure out where you stand. And I look to your leadership, Mayor, and I'm trying to figure out where you stand on this. You say you don't like or want 4 o'clock licenses. You want this tabled because you want to change something about these 2 license requests, when the essence of them, the essence of these requests are 4 o'clock license. So do you in favor having any more of the 2 licenses we already have for 4 o'clock?
Please get off the floor because I didn't even recognize you for it. You are the one that has caused problems with this, and I'm trying to
So you're going to
solve
bang
it.
the gavel and then you're going to take over talking? Does
Yeah,
anybody?
that's exactly what I'm doing, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm trying to give you a report and the council a report as to where I'm heading with this. I didn't want to do it in public, but the point of the matter is.
Sure, we have to do it in public.
Yeah,
That's our
when
job.
we get to something, we will do it in public. There are things that have to
Hopefully
be
the journal wrote
considered.
that down.
You know, you're rather ornery tonight. I don't know why you're like that. That's not your modus operandi. So, who's on the box? I'm sorry, I missed that statement. Were you referring to me?
Yeah, I'll get back up on it if you want, if you're okay with that.
No.
Okay.
Gentlemen, can we maybe vote on the motion?
To table, we need a vote to table.
All right, so what I want to do is solve this for the future more than the current. And if you say one more time that I'm in favor of 4 o'clock licenses, I've got to, admonish you and say, what in the heck are you talking about?
Well, then act like you're against them.
I'm
That's all
not
I'm
against
saying.
them, and I'm not for them. I want to change.
You were
the
before
A2.
you were for
I
it before
want
you
to-
were against it.
This is not a dialogue here, or monologue either. So that's why I asked for tabling, so we've got room to work with Joe and our police chief to come up with something better that lasts for a long time, not that just solves the single problem. There's a motion on the floor to table this issue. Roll call, please.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Messer.
To table.
Nay.
Alderman Dolick.
No.
Lemming.
Alderman Williamson.
Nay.
Alderman
No.
Ludwigson.
Nay.
All right, so what's the next question? We can't table it, so now what?
We have a motion to approve.
Who made the motion?
We need a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's on the agenda, Mayor, so it would be a motion to approve item 11A.
Motion
All
to
right.
approve item 11A.
I'm sorry. Any other things to talk about? You said something?
I was just making the motion.
Okay, we have that motion.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any other discussion? There being none.
Just a discussion that we are voting either yes to allow the licenses or no to say no to them, correct?
Correct.
That's what it is, yes. So, roll call, please.
Alderman Rosenthal.
I vote present.
Alderman Messer.
Nay.
Alderman Dolick.
Nay.
Alderman Williamson.
Nay.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Nay.
So, we're turning down the request.
Correct.
Thank you. Motion was, what was the motion? I'm sorry, 3-2?
4 to
0-4 with 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, item 11B is second reading of the ordinance amending Title I of the City Code adopting the pay plan, compensation of officers, employee salaries, and pay plan. This is something we do annually that sets a pay plan for non-collective bargaining employees and also the number of positions.
motion to approve.
Second.
A roll call for this, please.
Alderman Messer.
Aye.
Alderman Williamson.
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Item 11C is second reading of ordinance and staff memo adopting the fiscal year 18-19 budget for the city of Prospect Heights. We had a few comments from the last review of this, and we've incorporated that into, I think, a number of them were about the capital budget. As I recall, there was a request to spread out some of the information technology equipment over the longer term of the capital budget. There was reference made to the stormwater management project that we had. And then there was also discussion for staff to review the street program and what's proposed for expenditure for 2018. For that, we did review that, and we are requesting the movement of a couple streets. I'll make this recommendation. The idea being that we had some streets scheduled for 2019 that are in the same proximity of streets that are scheduled for 2018. It's a pretty marginal difference between 2019 quality and 2018. And in consultation with the engineer, it's felt that it'd be more efficient if we bundle these streets together because they're in the same neighborhood. That was one item. The other item that we have is it's really to position us in a better place for grant funding. Two streets that are coming up that are of considerable expense because one involves a reconstruction project on Willow Seminole, and the other is just resurfacing on Apple Drive. What we would like to do is, we're proposing, recommending, is that we provide for money for engineering in 2018, because that when it makes us eligible for a grant application for Surface Transportation Program funding, STP funding. But in order to make application, you have to have Phase 1 engineering completed. So it's worthwhile to, I feel that it's worthwhile to approve the engineering work so that when we're able to make an application, that avails us, should we be successful, and I think we have a good chance of being successful, of an 80-20 match on the street project. If we don't pursue STP funding, all of that is on the city's responsibility. So those are, Ms. Grafin, I think that we've covered the items that were brought up from the last meeting for inclusion in this budget.
So if I can just clarify from first reading to second reading, I believe everyone has this 3-page handout. I put together a schedule that shows the changes from the first reading to the second reading, as Joe has mentioned. The budget, as we read in the first meeting, came out to be the negative 847,000.
That's your copy.
Oh, okay.
That was published in the journal article that the mayor mentioned earlier. If you look at the changes that have been made since that first reading, the bottom line of the budget is now 1.3 million. That change consists of $60,000 in revenue for the administrative tow fees was added in. We also added expense for public safety salary increases and some part-time desk help wages changed. In SSA 4, we reduced the expenses by $15,000 because that would have resulted in a negative fund balance. And then your last change was the capital improvements that were just mentioned. So our bottom line budget will move from a negative 847 to a negative $1,000,003. The next page will show you the change in our overall fund balance, and it'll show you where we are positive still in all of our funds. The revenue for the budget for fiscal 18-19 proposed for the second reading is going to total $15,509,467. The expenses totaled by fund will total $16,815,340.
Push the pause button for a second.
Sure. The net change for the budget proposed is $1,305,000. If you look in this the last page of that three-page handout, in the last column, the projected fund balances after this budget will all be positive. The capital improvements fund specifically, if you'll note that, has the $7.6 million transfer into fund balance, with the $2.2 million of spending planned for year one of the capital improvements plan. We'll still have about $5.4 million thereafter. So all of our funds have both reserves and revenue to cover these expenses that are planned for in this current budget.
Motion to approve the ordinance adopting the budget.
Second.
I'm sorry, was that Alderman Messer?
Yes.
Let's have some decorum here. Joe brought this thing up. Joe, call for your motion.
Well, thank you.
Excuse me.
Second, we have a motion on the floor, and
I seconded it.
thank you. And we'll need a roll call vote for this.
Well,
Yes.
Discussion? Mr. Mayor, can I be
Yes, sir,
recognized?
discussion?
There was we used to get this fund balance report, and I think Mike did it this year once, where on the bottom left-hand side, there was a little quick math of showing us netting out to zero with these fund balances. Will that be in the final version of the budget where it shows restricted, unrestricted, by ordinance, the different categories of our reserves, or not reserves, but fund balances, so that we can see what's in the capital improvement, what's in the unrestricted free money?
In
You
the
wanna talk about-
final budget book that we present, that will be included.
Okay.
Yep.
It's the same thing, I think,
Yep.
but on the bottom left, there was a little grid.
We'll go through each fund and say what's restricted and what's available. Yes,
Okay.
we'll do that calculation.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Ludvixson.
Aye.
Alderman Williamson.
Aye.
Alderman Messer.
Aye.
Thank you. Brings us to our next item, which is 11D. This is second reading, ordinance establishing water rates. Each year, we review the water rates, we look at the component parts, which are operations and maintenance costs, capital costs, purchase costs of water supply, as well as debt service. Finance Department reviews that, and the ordinance that's before you tonight provides for a 3% increase. This basically keeps us up with all those component parts that make up the rate base. And entertain the motion at second reading, so it would would be adoption tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, questions? Do we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Alderman Williamson.
Aye.
Alderman Messer.
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Item 11E is the final part of the budget trilogy tonight. This is second reading of the ordinance approving fiscal year 17-18 budget amendment. And in the ordinance, it had identified, I think, a few transfers that we had discussed previously. I think we started this process in March. And we've talked about transfers from the general fund, transfers from solid waste fund, and so forth, so.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Oh, Sherry?
Alderman Ludwigson, I just want to clarify, earlier when you asked the question, was this amendment included in the monthly treasurer's report? It is not at this point until it's approved. So right now, those percentages were based on the original budget.
Thank you.
Any further comments, questions? If not, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Messer.
Aye.
Alderman Williamson.
Aye.
Thank you. And moving back to new business, let's see, it'd be item, I believe we left off at item 12G. And this is a resolution requesting the designation of Piper Lane and Apple Drive from Illinois Route 21 and Wolf Road as federal aid urban route. This resolution is necessary as part of our application to the Northwest Council of Mayors to become eligible. Upon their acceptance, we would become eligible for Surface Transportation Program funding, which, as mentioned previously, result, if we're successful, in 80% of the cost of resurfacing and reconstruction of these streets would be borne through this grant, the SDP grant. So it is beneficial. It's recommended that we approve this resolution because it's beneficial for the long-term capital planning of the city.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Thank you. And if not, if we could have a roll call motion,
Sure.
please.
Alderman Messer.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Williamson. Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye. Item H is, as the city attorney had mentioned previously, this came out of a discussion of the Strategic Directions Committee, but it is something that we can discuss in executive session.
So we're not gonna.
Yeah, so we can just carry this in executive session.
Correct, there's no pending motion or resolution or ordinance, and there would be no final action taken.
All right, 13, discussion selection of topics for upcoming workshop meetings. Items listed previously is discussion of capital improvements plan, staggered elections, commercial truck parking regulations, and home rule discussion.
Can I ask a question, please?
Go ahead, sir.
This is for Director Peterson. Where are we at with that commercial truck parking? Is there anything really left to discuss?
As I announced earlier on Wednesday night, the PZBA will be having the public hearing. After that, whatever motion comes out of that, conditions or changes, I will give an update, and we'll be working with the city attorney to draft ordinance to bring back to the council in May. So at this point in time, it's just finishing the process to go through, and I'm not sure how the outcomes will come of the public hearing, but that's where we are in the process.
So that, the public hearing is this Wednesday?
Correct.
Okay. So it's moving along.
It's on schedule to be, it's moving along.
So it potentially could be in front of us next month.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you for the update.
That brings us to item 14, approval of warrants.
Okay, our regular cost this period, $197,591.52. April 13, 2018 payroll posting, $140,528.66. Total warrants in the amount of $338,120.18.
Any questions on the warrants?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Messer. Aye. Alderman Williamson.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Any resident comments tonight?
There are none.
Okay. Which brings us to executive session.
Mayor, if I may. I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the sale of real estate, the purchase of real estate, and pending litigation.
So move.
Second. We need to vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll meet down here, please.
And just for clarification, there'll be no final action taken after discussion.